Today on the show, we are talking about the Uber retirement plan. I think Uber is German for super, isn't it?
It is.
It is?
Yeah, so it's an superannuation situation.
Is it really?
I don't know. Well, it's super Uber.
Yeah, that's right. So today on the show, we've got Nathan Fradley. He's a regular pest on the Retire Right show, and we're talking about the Uber superannuation Uber retirement plan. And this story and case study came about because Nathan flies up to Newcastle every now and again. We do some podcasts, then he flies back to Melbourne. He always talks to Uber drivers, which is cool, and they sometimes tell him about money, which is cool. Sometimes they ask him about money. But this was a case study that Nathan was telling me at breakfast, and I'm like, I think you said we should do it as a case study. I'm like, let's do it. So we threw some slides together. So we are going to be talking about the Uber retirement plan. My name is Glen James, joined by Nathan Fradley from Nathan Fradley Advice, and you are listening to Retire Right.
This is a podcast that will help you plan and execute one of the biggest moments in your life. That's retirement. You'll learn how to set up your finances in a way that benefits you, your lifestyle goals, and keeps you in the know within this complex world of money and investing. Your host is Glen James, former financial advisor, author, and host of the popular Money, Money, Money podcast. Glen is joined by experts in various fields around the topic of retirement in Australia. Any advice in this podcast is of a general nature. Full details are in the show notes of this episode. You only retire once, so retire right.
Nathan, do you want to maybe tell us the case study of Mr. Uber who you spoke with and lay the land? Because he gave you a lot of information.
Yeah, it is it's a common thing when you get an Uber and someone says, what do you do? And as soon as you say financial advisor, you end up in some really interesting conversations. A lot of the time, and you probably see this case study, very honest conversations too.
Yeah.
People, it's amazing how much you can chat about in a 30-minute trip.
So we're going to go through the current situation. So why don't you talk us through what they've currently got and the exact snapshot of today.
Yeah.
Then we'll talk about what he wanted to do, and then we'll talk about some considerations that you've talked to him about.
Yeah, 100%.
In a general way.
In a general way. And I mentioned, hey, would you mind if we did this? And he was like, no, that's fine as well. Because obviously this is anonymous and slightly modified, but it was, so he's in his 50s, so 59, 57 is the age of his spouse. They got no kids. They've spent a good part of their working life traveling the world. She's from overseas, so they don't have a lot of super. He was working in a manual job for a while, decent income, but hard to maintain. She earns about $200,000 a year. And they've got about 200 grand at super. So they don't have a lot of retirement assets. They've lived a really fulfilling life. They've bought themselves a house and they've got a decent amount of debt on it, about 800,000 of debt as well.
So the house worth 1.5 million, 800K mortgage. His super is 200. And are we saying she's got minimum super? We don't know when she moved here, but her earnings are quite decent.
Quite decent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I wonder, and we might not even know, but like for her to have not much super earning this, how long has she been in Australia? Like, and everyone's got a story and reasons for why they might not be in a better financial position looking at this, given that, you know, she's clearly dialed in and printing money in her job. Like, there's just a lot of questions, but it doesn't matter. This is where we are right now.
Yeah. And this is what it was only a 30-minute Uber trip as well.
Yeah.
But I think that the hint there is that there's not a lot of super. And sort of we start thinking about scenarios like this, I don't think this is necessarily uncommon. And what we were talking about this morning was people who are trying to figure out what to do and what are their plans. They're sitting there in the car, they're thinking about their plans, they're listening to Retire Right maybe, and they're going, what if we took this approach?
Okay, so based on that, so he said, and we've probably, set it up in a way that is more methodical than what the Uber driver was telling you. So we've split it up because he's probably going, yeah, this, and I'm going to do this, and by the way, my spouse has got this and all that stuff. So basically, in the nutshell, if we have a look now, If you're watching on YouTube, you can see it. If you're just listening, we'll kind of read you in order what his plan actually is for his Uber retirement. So what did he want to do?
He literally just said, hey, this is my retirement plan. What do you think?
Right.
And basically his intention was to work well into his 70s.
Yep.
He likes working. They've both worked all over the world. They have no intention of stopping early. The capacity of that depends. His mum is in her 80s, lives in another state, and she has a house worth around 1.6 million, and a little bit of money in the bank and a full pension. And so his plan was effectively keep working, maintain the lifestyle they've got, and when mum passes away, that inheritance can go into the offset account and he can draw down on it because he wanted to. He's got no one to leave his money to. He just wants to spend his money. That was his initial plan.
So another thing, he's got one brother, and so the estate, it's just him and the brother.
Yeah.
But there's an asterisk right there of the 50-50 estate plan. Why did I put an asterisk on the brother and the 50-50 in terms of the estate plan? What's significant that could be a spicy consideration?
I started telling you about it and you said, don't tell me anything. We'll do it live on the show. I'll put an asterisk here. So it sounds like the brother has some challenges and he lives with mum full time. So he's on some form of government disability benefit and lives with mum.
And if Mr. Uber is in his 60s, the brother's going to be plus or minus probably 10 years.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that does add some complication in. It adds some complication in about, not and this is a question of, not an accusation of, things like influence. A lot of the time we see families discovering that their parents have taken out reverse mortgages and things that they didn't know. When you've got situations where you're also caring for an adult child, that can happen too. Parents are caring; they want to help. They want to spend. He did mention that mum used to have a lot more super, so want to spend money to help their kids and support their kids and help out, and that becomes normalized, which can bring some challenges, I think, into these kinds of situations when you're relying on an inheritance and an equal split and what have you, because. One, what do you not know? And two, are there any concerns around that?
Because the flags for me there is the brother who clearly, from what you've been told, potentially has some challenges and he's on the disability pension and whatnot. The brother could be in sound mind and just physically not able to do what he wants to do. Could not be in sound mind and mum's caring for him. There could be a disability from his whole childhood that mum's still the primary carer. The thing that I think is the spicy asterisk is if old mate is of reasonable mind and still can physically function or limited physical function but in a sound mind, there is the possibility, if history tells us, that we've got it so good and we can slowly chip away potentially and spend, well, you said that the mother did have some income.
Yeah.
And my first response was, what's the relationship like with the brother? Because if it's not a good relationship and it's interstate, is the son who's living with mum, like, what's her estate plan? Is he pulling the strings? Is he organising some weird lifetime tenancy that the brother doesn't know about? So if mum dies, old mate's got the right to live in the house forever and then the money gets split. And these are just, we're pulling a lot of threads here, but I just wanted to more so talk about that element when Mr. Uber is, in his mind, part of his retirement plan is at some point in the next 20 years, maybe statistically within the next 10 years, I might get $800,000 when mum orders her final Uber. Now, I wanted to write that on the slide when mum orders her Uber hearse, but you didn't want that.
That crossed my line, yeah.
So he's basically like, I'll get the 800,000-ish, put it in my offset account and live off the cash.
Yeah. And that estate plan could be in place now and he could be aware of it, but it can be changed.
Yes.
And these are the variables that come into this that really start, it challenges the plan. If our entire plan is reliant on an inheritance, we should never plan on inheritances ever, because we just don't know the variables that can occur.
Yeah.
All the way down to valuations and things. We could find that maybe the house is worth 1.6 on paper, but maybe in 10 years, mum's not really taking care of it, he's not taking care of it, the house is more derelict, and it can't be sold for that kind of value.
Yeah.
You've got different challenges. Like there is so many factors that can play in. I think that, in this instance, if, and I've seen plenty of examples of financial abuse and what have you, but if that's the case, we might have other issues. But there could just be general challenges around, well, where does the brother live when that's not happening? Can he afford a house to live in and an income, and who supports him, and how does that play out?
So the biggest questions that you're thinking needs clarity, like Mama Uber, is she got a long-term family history of everyone living to 102? Is she rocking along? Is she not? And this is the whole thing. And I think this is the trap and the tension with life, where practically speaking, in the ordinary course of life, 2 sons, $1.6 million house, mum in her 80s. And I can tell you right now, my former neighbour, and I still text and email and drop in and see where I used to live, she's 85 or 6. She is not going anywhere. Like, we are in an era where we hear these ages, but you can be in your mid-80s and still rock solid.
There is, in the aged care work I do, between 65 and 98, there is, sometimes you have no idea what the age actually is. The capacity of some 90-year-olds I've worked with is amazing. The capacity of some 7-year-olds is challenging.
Yeah.
And everything in between. So that's a big factor. That health thing and that care need.
Yeah.
She's caring for him. When she needs care, who cares for her?
Yeah. So, and I think the reason I wanted to talk about this, I don't want Mr. Uber and Mrs. Uber to not be strategic with their own life, even though they're knocking on 60's door themselves, to think that, well, we just idle until the Uber hearse arrives. And then problems are solved, because we know there could be 10 years of not having that inheritance or more. And also, what if there is some mum's care and we need a chunk of money for aged care in the future? What are we doing, Mr. Uber, if there is actual zero inheritance?
Yeah.
And so what you would be clarifying with them, you've written here, what is him and Mrs. Uber's actual income plans, because they're happy to work for the next 10 years.
Yeah.
So that's what you'd want the clarity on.
Yeah, what's it look like actually?
Yeah.
I think sometimes these kind of scenarios we make assumptions on, this is how it's always been. I've not really had investments before, so I've not seen that compounding effect. So we'll just hang on. And then when this big event happens, we can clear it because we can see numbers in chunks.
Yeah.
But that time value of money, I think, comes into it. We've got to work out on.
So, nutshell that, old mate, mum dies, we pay off the mortgage, what's left, we live off the cash, happy days.
Yeah, that was the plan.
We're going to get your first thoughts right after this.
If you're after personal financial advice, don't get it from a podcast. If you would like help based on your own personal situation, head over to retireright.com.au, click Get Help, and we'd be happy to introduce you to one of our trusted professionals. Our panel of vetted financial advisors and mortgage brokers work with people all over Australia, so they can connect with you wherever you are. That's retireright.com.au and click Get Help.
Okay, what are your first thoughts when you look from a just structural thing, if you were talking to them as a client?
The first thing I said to him, he said, my plan is to put the money in my offset account and draw down on it. And I said, cool. Just so you know, the offset account is assets tested for Centrelink. So while it is offsetting the mortgage and therefore withdrawing repayments out of itself and slowly decreasing over time, your pension's going to be next to nothing because that asset's tested.
Yeah.
So I think immediately we start looking at, well, is it offset? Is it redraw? That kind of question comes into it.
Yeah.
Centrelink don't care about money against a mortgage on a redraw. They don't see it. They don't ask about it.
Yeah.
If it's a primary house. So that's the first thing.
So first things first, his strategy would be more favourable if he just dumped it into the mortgage and then had a DIY reverse mortgage, his own reverse mortgage.
Exactly. Which I think was his intention, and maybe it was a mix of terms and things that.
Yeah.
But that was the idea. It's like I've got this house. Look at this equity. I want to be able to draw down it over time and spend that money because I'm not leaving it to anyone else. I think that's the driver behind that decision.
Yeah.
And then the inheritance not being guaranteed. That's the, as we just discussed, the big one.
Yeah. So when you've kind of fast forwarded to his 67th birthday, what are the things that you want to kind of, I don't know, talk about in terms of your thoughts?
I think when we're making plans like this, we make any financial plans.
Yeah.
The first step should be work out if we did nothing, what's it look like? So any decisions we make should be improving on that outcome. Right?
Yeah, so
We've
it's
got a
almost like
baseline.
the benchmark.
Yeah.
If you never walked into this office and didn't do anything, that's what's happening.
100%.
Yeah.
This should be and this is for this I worked out on back of the envelope calculation. If she's earning $200,000 a year plus super, and we put say 10,000 in for him, we didn't know his income. They should end up with about $650 of super at his 67th birthday. So while he's saying, I've only got $200,000 of super, I don't have much super, that compounding effect.
There's still 10 years of compounding and contributions.
And this is someone who hasn't had super, so hasn't seen
What was his
that.
background?
I didn't get.
Yeah.
I just know that he traveled a lot and they sort of did things all over the world.
No, but he's doing Uber now. I think, maybe we did mention he was
doing some manual work,
work.
like dock work and things like that. Yeah.
Right, okay.
Yeah, so labouring stuff, which was it was decent income, but very hard on
And
the
did he
body.
say he likes working? Like they're happy to keep working? Yeah.
He's happy to keep working, and whether he's driving the Ubers or, they've travelled and things, say, washing dishes for all it matters, more than happy to do something, keep them occupied.
Yeah.
So, whether she can maintain that income, I mean, she's a bit younger than him, so she'd be retiring earlier in this instance, but I think that just paints a real basic outline. And the other thing we want to look at is if they keep making those minimum repayments, what's the mortgage value? Because it's not $800. In this instance, it'd go down to about $690.
Oh, so in 10 years, they only can do $100,000. Is that what you're saying?
That's minimum repayments.
Minimum repayments.
Minimum repayments brings it down, to it's eight or so years, brings it down to $690. So give or take, with no other changes to the situation, they're not saving any money in this situation. We're just spending what we earn.
Yeah.
We're, effectively could pull out the super and pay off the mortgage at that point if we wanted to, and have some age pension coming in from him, or still keep working for a bit but not have to worry about the mortgage. Or this starts to set the scene for what the future can look like. And therefore, to your point, well, what if we did put some more money on the mortgage? What if we did put some more in super?
Yeah, I just think you have to see these inheritances not as a retirement plan parachute, but as literally a bonus.
The windfall.
Literally, and I get it. We live in reality. There is a very high chance old mate will get $800,000 in today's dollars at some stage. But if the brother creeps in, there's dickery going on, might not happen. Might only get $300,000 or $400,000 if that's contested, because he can go, well, I was financially dependent on mum as well for the last however long, and that's why if you've got a crap relationship with your brother, this is so interesting. You got to think, if the brother had lived with the mum for the last forever, right? Mum dies, her estate has a house that needs to be wound up. How willing is this brother at his age when that happens? Maybe he's 60 or 70, needs to move house and buy a house or downsize.
Where can he afford to live?
That
is it
is
even
such
possible?
a ticking time bomb.
There's layers to this. And he mentioned at one point there was controls in the will to like ensure he doesn't spend it all at once. But where's he living?
Yeah.
How does someone who's receiving money from a trust or whatever it might be, how do they get a rental property? I mean, it's hard enough to get one when you've got an income. But if you're in your 70s, how do you have housing security?
Yeah. So that's why, like, it's easy to go, yeah, we're just going to get that 100 when, the hearse arrives, the Uber. And I don't know. We have to have our own plan for our own life as best as we can do, because what if we need high care and the house has to be sold and we spend $400,000 on a RAD and then there's some other money that isn't, like, that has to go towards the care or insert thing here. I don't know.
Or what happens if they can't keep working?
Yeah.
What if it's nothing? What if the family situation is perfectly fine? It's actually fine. It's all worked out. They've done all the right stuff. The estate's set up properly, but mum's still healthy. Mum's doing well. She's up and active because she's caring for her son, and they can't work anymore.
I mean, the only thing that I would probably, if we go back to their current situation, they do have a little bit of meat in the house. So there could be a downsize to a villa that they own with cash.
Yeah. That could be an option. If the house is worth 1.3, that might dent that plan, depending on markets. And I think to your point, what we're really trying to do here is when you look at plans like this, and I want to pick up on the ability to spend your equity later because I think it's a really interesting thought process. But let's just in these cases, you want to set yourself up for the best chance of opportunity, not just wait for it to happen to you. And I think that's the difference. It's like we know what's going to happen at some point, but what if these things don't? Can we make the likelihood of success greater?
Yeah.
And that's where we start looking at, where are you spending your money? Can we do a bit of savings? At some point, your lifestyle is going to drop. Let's start making those changes gradually over time and all that kind of fun stuff.
So on your slides here, you've said thought experiment, is this wrong, around – just talk to us about these points.
Yeah, I thought one of the things I found really interesting about this, and kind of the reason I raised it as something we should run, is that I think there's common in a lot of work we do is always consideration of inheritance and estates, and I want to give this to my kids, and a lot of time with retirement planning, it is so commonly about supporting children and preserving inheritances, preserving estates, and that's very admirable, and I love it. But I also like to encourage my clients to spend their money, and there's often this internal challenge around running out of money. What happens if we have nothing? What happens if the cash runs out? What happens if, we've just got our house, so we have to be forced to downsize? All these factors. But that's their concerns and their stresses. Not everyone has to have that. Now, I think there's a lot to be said about housing security. What happens if the bank comes knocking and says, hey, you're in your 80s, you're not working anymore, we're going to have to call this in. Can you pay the mortgage or you have to sell and move on? Or that loan will come to term eventually.
Yeah.
But I think it's an interesting thought experiment, and I'd love your thoughts on this, Glenn. Like, if their plan is, and it's planned, not just shoot from the hip, we can take this much out of our mortgage over this period of time, and it can maintain its own repayments and get us to 100, but we get a bit extra money and we spend our equity. Is that so bad?
So what you're talking about then, it's entering the chat about reverse mortgage type vibe or equity release type thing, right?
Yeah. You got this wealth tied up in this property.
Yeah.
All the assets tied up in this property that you can't spend.
Well,
and income poor, asset rich in retirement.
I mean, in this situation, if they've got no kids and they do, we will assume that within 10 or 15 years, maybe they will own the house completely and still have a little bit of money from mum. Yeah, do what you want. But make sure you also have in the background, well, what if we have our own aged care issues in the future? So I think I'm not a huge fan of reverse mortgages in terms of the actual product because the interest rates are more than the normal housing rate and it's gouging. I'm probably more in favor of an actual equity release buyout type scenario. But yeah, I've got no problem if they're living in $1.5 million house no real dependents or no one really to leave it to or want to leave it to, yeah, spend it. Who cares?
I've done quite a bit of work in the sort of Moonee Ponds, Essendon area of Melbourne, and there's a lot of older Italian families out there, and they've got these houses that they've lived in for 50, 60 plus years. They on a full pension, they have nothing else. They grow their tomatoes, they grow their lemons, they got their chooks, and they pay $9,000 a year in rates.
Sounds like your house. You got your chooks and tomatoes.
That's the dream. I love my chooks. I haven't got tomatoes is next year.
I bet your neighbours love you.
Yeah. Yeah, well, yeah, they get eggs. Everyone loves
when you get eggs. There's only one
cock,
isn't there, in your house?
Yeah. They're hens, mate.
Exactly.
They're noisy, but I think with those people, what we often see is they can live in squalor. They can live, you get $30,000 a year as a single person, as a widow or widower you got a $2.5 million house, but the foundations are shot and there's holes in the walls and there's no aircon and it's unsafe.
It's a bad time.
Yeah, and moving them is they don't want to move, but they've got so much equity in this home, which is fantastic, but they don't get to use it. And I think it's an interesting idea.
I think there's a mindset out there where people would actually struggle with setting up an equity release or a reverse mortgage and living off the house. Even if there was no dependence, it's just this psychological hurdle where it's like, I don't want to increase my living expenses and buying that new car with equity because that's my money. I don't want to borrow it for myself.
Yeah.
Like, this is a whole big mind game.
Taking on debt at that point. And to be clear, I'm very, very conservative when it comes to equity release and that kind of stuff. Like, it's very conservative with those things. But I do think it's an interesting thought process. I mean, another way you could do it is things like retirement villages that do offer lower entry points, and therefore you can unlock equity and spend that way, but it impacts pensions. And there's different ways around this, but it's an interesting thought process around, well, it is my money.
Yeah.
And we are a nation of asset-rich, income-poor retirees, which can create longevity issues. And you talk about that in different episodes. But yeah, I think it's an interesting one. And so hopefully,
if this client, not that it sounds like it's an ideal type client for your line of work, but if you're in a good mood and you're like, yeah, I'm going to give this person advice and set up stuff, like, are you focusing on, like, what's the actual income for both of you over the next 10 years? Let's just make an assumption on that and try and maximize our own earning potential now, be it salary sacrifice to super, be it pay down the mortgage aggressively. Like, when this all comes to the crunch and Mr. Uber says, Nathan, give me your formal financial advice, knowing what you've known from all the chatter, what's your kind of prescription pad right now?
The number one thing is intentionality.
Right.
Like, it's not just saying, the plan is, this will happen. It's actually saying, what are we doing? What do we earn? What do we spend?
Yeah. That's no different than a 30-year-old.
No different.
Or 40-year-old. Or 50-year-old.
Being intentional is so much of... And the power of advice is that it gives clarity to the intention. It gives context. If we're intentional, we can make informed decisions instead of just waiting for it to happen, walking around in the dark. That's the number one thing, because then that lets us go, well, we're earning, say he's on 100, they're probably bringing in $200,000 a year net of tax, 50 grand on the mortgage. Where's it going?
Yeah. I mean, they're
not going to maintain that on the pension.
That's right. They are spending money. Like, with that amount of income, and sure, he's transitioned to Uber driving. Did he say how long he'd been driving for? No. So whether he's been Uber driving for a week or 5 years, we don't know. But we know that he doesn't have much super. So was he a contractor in his career with the manual labor thing? So I just think the biggest red flag is brother living with mum and that part of I think I'm more worried not on the financial side, but practically speaking, when Mama Uber passes away, what's brother Uber going to be doing?
What are the expectations? What's what's going to happen here?
Yeah.
Like, how does this actually work? And I think that's so important for them to understand himself is like, yeah, that's the intention. But the reality is, okay, let's say it gets put in a testamentary trust and it leads out some income to him. Then
Yeah,
what?
where the guy's
Where's he
living.
live? Where's he,
Yeah.
How does he get a rental?
So what
you know?
This could be some type of discussion now, and I don't. It's really hard because mum, and this is we don't know if the guy's a parasite living with mum for free and he doesn't have a friggin' life and he's a loser milking the system. Like, we live in a reality where that can be a thing.
Yeah.
Or there's a genuine care need. And mum's actually, 80-year-old mum's still caring for 50 or 70-year-old, whatever the age is, son.
And but either one of those, I think it's the same problem, right?
Well,
whether he's a parasite or not,
yeah,
it's still, how does someone live with that money?
I don't know.
That
Hey,
house,
if you are watching on YouTube, because I like reading the comments, and let us know below what's your take on this situation, because I just think this is a great thing to discuss, because where there's a will, there's a relative, right? We know that much. But that's just the biggest red flag that I see.
100%.
And it could be nothing, but I don't know. I've been in those meetings with family who aren't talking together, and it's just someone gets screwed at some point. Now, that's either Mama Uber getting screwed now because she's caring for a leech and a scumbag, or it's legit and she's caring for someone with a legitimate need, or the brother's going to get screwed out of a legitimate inheritance. All right, let me know in the comments what you think, because I'm genuinely curious to see everyone's take here. But interesting thing to think about. But I think the whole thing that led to this whole chat over breakfast today was money in an offset account can be seen by Centrelink. However, if it's even paid into the mortgage and there's a redraw, it's not seen by Centrelink. That's the TLDR on that.
Yeah, yeah. And in all of this, that plan variability, plan as much control as you can, and then no matter the circumstances, you've got the best chance of success for yourself or minimal disruption to your own financial
and have
situation.
a plan for your own life, regardless of your age. And this is the thing. Mama Uber also needs to have a plan. She's in her 80s. Okay, Mama Uber, what if you fall over and break your hip and you can't be at home or care? Because the older we get, the higher we have as a falls risk, probably, or some type of medical event. The older we get, there is a higher chance of dying. That's 101. The older we get, there is a higher chance of heart attack. The older we get, there is a higher chance of cancer. The older we get, the higher chance of stroke. Mama Uber also needs, and she probably is quite aware of this, that she's got this grown person living with her. What happens if Mama Uber isn't around for a short period of time? Or even, like, this whole thing's just wild. And that's why personal finance is personal. Hey, if you want to reach out for advice, you can do so. There's a QR code that's been on the screen. I'll introduce you to a financial advisor. If you reach out and you think, I need to talk with Nathan Fradley, just put on the form any other details. I heard Glen and Nathan talk. If you are a good fit for Nathan's business, I will recommend and introduce you to Nathan. I mean, you can go to him directly, knock yourself out. I just want to save everyone's time, basically. Respect you from getting all these inquiries. But talk to me about the type of work and clients that you deal with.
I think what's interesting about this case is this can very well be something I would do. So on its own, hey, my plan is to put some money in super, and that's not necessarily it. But when you start adding in those family elements and that's the aged care piece, what would it cost someone to go into care right now? Would the son be regarded as a protected person or not? And what would the costs be there, and how does that impact? And building out that plan, or building out the impacts of the inheritance, or doing advice for these guys that is aware of those things. So we're doing calculations and things, some illustrative stuff, so that we know the impacts of that risk planning. That's the kind of work I do, where it's aged care, it's divorce, it's state stuff. It gets in the weeds, Yeah,
this is, quote unquote, up your alley if there is that scope of working out, and maybe it is having a meeting with mum, the brother, and Mr. Uber together and just helping herd some kittens, maybe. But thank you so much for having a watch and listen today. My name is Glen James, joined by Nathan Fradley. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Glen.
Any advice is general financial advice only, which does not take into account your objectives, financial situation, or needs. Because of that, you should consider if the advice is appropriate to you and your needs before acting on the information. If you do choose to buy a financial product, read the Product Disclosure Statement, PDS, and Target Market Determination, TMD, and obtain appropriate financial advice tailored to your needs. Simo Interactive, Pty Ltd, and Glen James are authorised representatives of Money Sherpa Pty Ltd, which holds Financial Services Licence 451289. Martin McGrath, Financial Edge Group, and its employed financial advisors are authorised representatives of Synchron Advice, AFSL 243313. Opinions or comments from any guest on the podcast are theirs, and not those of the hosts, the publisher, or their respective licence holders.